Capita's role in Barnet, my main concern is the lack of democracy which has been built into the process. Barnet are in the business of looking after people, of meeting their needs as residents, and sometimes that's not about profit. Capita, or a PLC, their job is to make a profit for their shareholders. Now that can sometimes put Barnet and Capita into conflict, and it certainly puts those with the greatest need into conflict, because you can't always measure what they need in terms of profit. We've seen that with things like Hendon Crematorium, where Capita are keen to increase memorialisation. It's a great word, but actually it means how to make more money. And their whole business plan that was set out in the contract is quite clear that they need to make money out of death. And that can jar with a lot of people, a lot of residents whose nearest and dearest are in the crematorium. It extends across the rest of the council. When you have an organisation in profit, whose objective is to make profit, looking after roles like planning, roles like trading standards, roles like environmental health, actually I'd be really anxious if the person responsible for checking out hygiene standards in schools, for example, was also in it for profit. Where do their motives lie? When there are key decisions to be made, how do they make those? How do they prioritise those? Now, it may be that there's not an issue there, and people may say, well, don't worry about it. The reason why we should worry about it is because there's no transparency. It's the whole issue of commercial sensitivity. We have no right to inspect a lot of what Capita do because they claim it's commercially sensitive. So without that transparency, how can we be sure that actually they are acting in our best interest? I don't get a sense that councillors really quite understand how secretive Capita will be allowed to be under the terms of the contract. And that's why I think people should be increasingly worried. We haven't seen that many issues so far, but it's very early days. We're 8 months in to a 10-year contract. I think when we'll start seeing problems is in the next couple of years, particularly if there are more budget cuts from central government and the squeeze is put on Capita to deliver more for less money. My other key concern is actually what were we told before the last election, and that's nowhere near the reality of what we've got today. If you look back to what Mike Freer, who was the architect of One Barnet, was saying just 2 or 3 months before the election in 2010, there was no mention of the degree of outsourcing that we've now got. They're all sort of very fluffy terms about it'll be a better relationship with the residents. Well, it's not a better relationship with the residents. Actually, it's become a completely confrontational relationship with the residents. There was nothing about the level of outsourcing in the Conservative manifesto at 2010. There was no mention of it at all. It was about working more effectively and more efficiently. Well, hang on a minute, we've now handed over a huge amount of council services to a private company to run for the next 10 years. Not a single word of that was mentioned in the manifesto. And this proliferation of outsourcing in Barnet and across the country will take away a lot of rights of transparency, a lot of rights of engagement, a lot of rights of control from ordinary residents. And at a time when residents, I think, everywhere are looking for much greater involvement in the way their councils run, that to me is a huge step backwards. We're all looking for the ability to engage with our council, to determine what we want in terms of services, but that's been taken away from us because it's now the responsibility of an outsourcing company. Barnet is the benchmark now for other local authorities, and if I was living elsewhere, I'd be saying to people, be very, very careful of what you're letting yourself in for.
Over 16 mil, and what do you get? Silence from the Tories and people in debt. St. Peter Dungy chorus, we can go. Let's hold our soul to the Capita store.